I gave her everything. My time, my love, my soul. And then, she told me I meant nothing. So I did something that would change everything. But as I stood there, watching it all slip away, I wondered, had I made the right choice? Before we dive deeper, hit the subscribe button to the channel where betrayal, drama, and hidden truths come alive in every emotional story. And let us know where you're listening from in the comments. I had given everything for her. My time, my love, my hopes, 30 years. 30 years of my life dedicated to raising her, loving her, and making sure she never knew the pain of being abandoned. 30 years of doing everything in my power to be the mother she deserved. And yet, here I was, standing in front of her, my heart aching from the coldness of her words. I meant nothing to her. The words echoed in my mind, playing over and over like a broken record. My heart, which had always beat for her, felt as though it had stopped in that instant. My breath caught in my throat. It was as if the world had frozen. Her voice, that damning sentence, hanging between us, separating us forever. I didn't know how to process it. How could I? How could the child I had poured my soul into, the one I had fought for through every hardship, say such a thing to me? She was standing there, not even looking at me now, her arms crossed, her face expressionless, as though I didn't matter, as though I had never mattered. I tried to speak. The words wouldn't come. How could they? After everything I had done for her, how could I have been reduced to nothing? How could she have turned her back on me like this? After all the sacrifices I made for her, after all the sleepless nights, the struggles, the pain. I whispered, but my voice cracked. What could I say to her? How could I even begin to explain the years I had given her, the love I had sacrificed for her, only to be discarded like an old piece of clothing? She turned away, walking out of the room, leaving me standing there, breathless, lost in the devastation of what had just happened. She meant nothing to me. No, that wasn't possible. I had raised her, I had given everything for her. And now in one single moment, she had torn it all down. She had shattered my heart, leaving me broken, questioning everything I thought I knew about love, sacrifice and family. The silence that followed was deafening. The walls of the house seemed to close in on me, suffocating me. What was left for me now? Looking back, I wonder where it all went wrong. When did I stop being enough for her? When did she start to resent me for everything I had done? For 30 years I had poured my life into raising her, never once thinking about what I was sacrificing. I was young when I became a mother, too young to know what it meant to give everything for another person. But I learned fast. Her father had left us when she was just a baby. I had no choice but to be both mother and father to her. I had never intended to raise her alone, but life doesn't always give you a choice. So I did what any mother would do. I sacrificed. I worked long hours, held down multiple jobs, barely slept, just to make sure she had what she needed. Every decision I made was for her. Every dream I had was put on hold so I could make sure she had everything. I remember the long nights, sitting up at the kitchen table, balancing bills and budgeting, knowing that there was never enough money, but always finding a way to make it work. And then, when she came to me with her first school project, I forgot all the stress, the exhaustion. She was my world. I took pride in seeing her grow, seeing her become the person I had always hoped she would be. But somewhere along the way something shifted. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was the years of me putting her first, of making sure she had every opportunity while I neglected my own needs. Or maybe it was the years of me being emotionally absent, too consumed with providing for her, to realize that she needed more than just things. She needed me to be present in ways I didn't understand. She started to pull away as she got older. The small moments of connection, of closeness, started to fade, and I didn't even notice until it was too late. And when she told me, with those cold words, that I meant nothing to her. I realized that all those years of sacrifice, of love, had not mattered to her, not in the way I thought they had. For all my efforts I had failed her. I had failed to see the distance growing between us. I had failed to notice that the person I was working so hard to provide for was no longer the child I knew, and now, she was gone, not physically but emotionally. She had left me behind, and I didn't know how to find my way back, and that's when the idea came to me. I never thought it would come to this. I had always prided myself on being a mother who loved unconditionally, who gave everything for her child. I had believed that love would be enough, but now, standing in the aftermath of her words, I couldn't help but question everything I had ever believed. How could I continue to love someone who had so casually thrown me aside like an old forgotten object? I spent the next few days in a haze, replaying the moment over and over in my mind. Each time, the sting of her words grew sharper, deeper. How could she say that to me? How could she not see everything I had done for her, everything I had given up, everything I had sacrificed? For 30 years I had put her first. I had lived and breathed for her, and this is what I got in return. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she wasn't the person I thought she was. She wasn't the little girl who had hugged me after school, the teenager who confided in me about her dreams and her fears. No, she had become someone I didn't recognize, someone who cared only for herself, and that hurt the most. The betrayal didn't come from her turning her back on me. No, it came from the realization that I had been living in a fantasy. I had been clinging to an image of her that no longer existed. The daughter I had loved so fiercely was gone. I had to make her understand. I had to make her feel the pain she had caused me. She needed to know that her actions had consequences, that when you take someone's love for granted, you lose it. And I wasn't going to just hand her everything I had worked for. Not after what she said. No, she would learn. The thought consumed me, like a slow burn that wouldn't let up. Revenge. It was all I could think about. It was the only thing that made sense anymore. How else was I going to make her understand the depth of what she had done to me? How else would I be able to take back the years of my life I had given her, only to have them discarded without a second thought? But there was more to it than just that. I couldn't just take everything from her. That would be too easy. No. I wanted her to feel the loss, to feel the emptiness I felt every time I thought about her, the inheritance I had been planning to give her. The house, the money, the future. It had always been hers, or so I had thought. But now it was going to someone who deserved it more, someone who had shown me more loyalty, more kindness, more understanding than she ever had. Mr. Harris. He was always there, always willing to lend a hand when I needed it, always kind, always supportive. He had never once let me down. And in a world where my daughter had shown me nothing but disdain, Mr. Harris had been my rock. I wasn't doing this out of spite, well, maybe a little, but more than that, I was doing it out of necessity, out of the need to feel something, out of the need to reclaim my life, to show myself that I still mattered, that I still had the power to make choices, that I could take control of my own fate. I called him a few days later, my hands shaking as I dialed the number. I didn't know what I expected him to say, but when he answered, his voice was warm, comforting, just as it always had been. Mr. Harris, I began, I have something to talk to you about, something important. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear the quiet hum of his house in the background. I wasn't sure what he was thinking, but I could feel the weight of the moment in the air. My next words would change everything. I want to give you the inheritance, I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. I've decided that you're the one who deserves. He was silent for a moment, and then I heard him clear his throat. You've been too good to me, Mr. Harris, I continued, my voice breaking just slightly. You've been more of a father to me than she ever was, and it's time you got what I've worked for. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The decision had been made, but the weight of it lingered. Every time I passed the kitchen, the place where we used to sit together, talk about our days, I felt a sharp sting. It wasn't just the house or the inheritance, it was everything. The years, the memories, the quiet moments that we had shared, or so I thought. The house was so quiet now, the air thick with the silence that had settled between us. When she had left that day, I had expected the silence to fill the space, but instead, it felt like a chasm opening up, swallowing everything. There were no more phone calls, no more checking in. It was as if she had already written me out of her life, as if I no longer existed in the way I once had. But I couldn't bring myself to call her. Not yet. I needed time to process, time to let the reality of what had happened sink in. Each passing hour made it clearer. I had raised a stranger. The woman who stood before me that day, she wasn't the little girl who once clung to my side. She wasn't the daughter who looked up at me with those innocent eyes, asking me for answers, seeking comfort in my presence. No. This was someone else, someone who had learned to turn her back on me, someone who saw my love as a weakness, as something to be discarded when it no longer suited her, and that, more than anything, hurt the most. The silence between us became unbearable, and I found myself pacing the living room, staring out the window at the old oak tree in the front yard. I remember planting it when she was born. It had grown tall over the years, just like her. But now it seemed to mock me. Its branches reached out, but never back. Much like my daughter, I knew I had to face her eventually. I couldn't avoid it forever. But every time I thought about confronting her, I felt my chest tighten. What would I say? Would she even care? She had never seemed to care before, not in the way that I needed her to. I'd given her my heart, my soul, all of me. And for what? To be told I meant nothing? It was in the middle of these thoughts when I heard a knock at the door, a soft, almost tentative knock. I froze for a moment. My heart skipped. Was it her? Had she come back? But no. It was Mr. Harris. I should have known. He had always been a presence in my life, always around when I needed him, always there to offer a hand or a word of encouragement. "Hello, Miss Duncan," he said my name with such softness as if he knew what had been weighing on my heart. "Hello, Mr. Harris." I couldn't hide the exhaustion in my voice, nor the emotion that laced my words. He stepped inside, his eyes taking in the emptiness of the room. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude, but I was wondering if you needed anything. I'm just next door. You know I'm always around." His voice was kind, but there was something else there, something more, knowing. I nodded, but couldn't bring myself to speak. He didn't need words. He understood. He always had. "It's been hard, hasn't it?" he said quietly, as if he was speaking to the person who had known me the longest. Not just the neighbor. I looked at him, surprised. He had never been one to ask such things. But then, I suppose, neither had I. It's been impossible," I replied. My voice cracked, and I could feel the tears welling up, but I held them back. I wouldn't let him see that. "Not yet, not like this." He nodded solemnly, but didn't press further. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the inheritance, and about how you've been feeling." His words hung in the air, weighted with meaning. I didn't know what I expected him to say, but I had no idea how much I needed to hear this. To hear that someone cared, someone who had no reason to but had been there through it all. I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage, Miss Duncan," he continued, his voice almost a whisper now, "but I've seen the way things have been between you and your daughter, and I understand more than you think." His words lingered between us, heavy and charged. I wanted to ask him why. Why did he understand? What was he seeing that I had missed? But I couldn't bring myself to ask. Instead, I just nodded. "I'm sorry it's come to this," he said, "but I want you to know that if you ever need anything at all, I'm here." And that's when it hit me. This man, this neighbor, this constant presence in my life, he was the one who had never let me down, the one who had shown me kindness when no one else had, and somehow in the midst of my pain and anger, he had become my anchor. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe this was the sign I had been waiting for. I had given her everything, but now I would give it to someone who deserved it. I couldn't keep living like this. The silence between us, the brokenness in my heart. It was all too much. Each passing day felt like I was suffocating, drowning in a world I no longer recognized. And the anger, it was there, simmering beneath the surface, always present, always waiting for a reason to break free. I thought about what she said every single day. You mean nothing to me. How could she say that? After everything, after 30 years of love, sacrifice and devotion, I couldn't keep pretending that it didn't matter. I couldn't ignore the hollow feeling inside me anymore. The anger was too overwhelming now, and the more I let it fester, the more I realized something that scared me more than anything. I had to act. I couldn't let this betrayal stand, not when I had given everything and received nothing in return. And then there was Mr. Harris. His quiet presence, his unwavering support, had become a lifeline. I had always seen him as a friend, a neighbor, but now, I was starting to see him as something more. He had been there for me, and he had never asked for anything in return. He was the one person who had shown me kindness when I needed it most. He understood. He always understood. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, it hit. I had been so focused on her, on the daughter who had turned her back on me, that I had completely ignored the one person who had been standing beside me all along. I had the power to make a choice. I didn't have to keep punishing myself by holding on to a love that was unreciprocated. I didn't have to keep pouring my heart into someone who didn't care. I could do something different. I could give it to someone who deserved it, someone who had never once let me down. Mr. Harris. I thought about the inheritance, the house, the savings, the life I had worked so hard to build. All of it was meant for her, but now, I realized, it wasn't hers to take. Not anymore, not after everything she had said. She had already shown me that I meant nothing to her. It was time to show her that I could make my own choices, that I could take control of my life again, that I could take back what was mine. The decision was final. I had made it. I could feel the weight of it. As I dialed Mr. Harris's number, my hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to do this. I needed to take back my power. The phone rang once, twice, and then, his voice answered, steady as always. Hello, Mrs. Duncan. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath. I need to talk to you. It's about the inheritance. There was a long pause on the other end. I knew he was probably wondering what had changed, why I was calling him now, why I was bringing this up when I had been silent for so long. I've decided to give it to you, I said, my voice steady, but the gravity of the decision making each word feel like a stone sinking into my chest. You want to give it to me? His voice was soft, almost incredulous, but there was no mistaking the sincerity in it. Yes, I said, I want you to have it. I've thought long and hard about this, and I believe you're the one who deserves it. You've been there for me when no one else has. You've been a friend, a constant, and for that, for everything you've done, I'm giving you everything. He didn't speak for a long time. The silence stretched between us, but this time, it wasn't suffocating, it was free. Finally he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. I never expected this. You don't have to say anything, I replied. Just know that I've made my choice. And with that, I hung up. It was done. I had made the choice. I had taken control. The weight of that realization settled into my bones like a strange heavy comfort, like finally finding the door in a maze that seemed to stretch forever. I felt something stir inside me. Not relief, not joy, but something else, something quiet. It was power. Yes, but it was also a raw kind of grief, a grief I wasn't sure I had permission to feel anymore. I had made the choice. I had decided, and that decision, the one that had been so painfully slow to form, was fine. The air in the room felt thicker now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. My heart was pounding against my chest, but strangely, not from fear anymore. No, this wasn't fear, this was something else. It was the feeling of letting go. I could feel the ache of the past years stretching away from me, each moment of sacrifice, each tear shed, each sleepless night, each angry word exchanged. All of it felt like a life I was leaving behind. It wasn't the life I wanted, but it was the one I had fought for, the one I had believed in, but now, I was walking away from it, walking away from the mother I had been, walking away from the daughter I had tried to save, and somehow, it felt like the only thing I could do to survive. I wasn't sure if I would ever get her back, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to anymore, but I knew this: I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her indifference, I couldn't keep giving and giving, only to be thrown away when I was no longer useful to her. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I slowly set the phone down. The conversation with Mr. Harris had been easier than I expected, his acceptance quiet and steady, like a calm river that kept flowing no matter how the storm raged around it. I stood by the window, looking out at the same old view I had seen 1,000 times before, the trees, the garden, the old oak that had watched over our house for decades. It felt like the world had stopped for a moment. Everything had slowed, like a camera focusing in on a single frame. The past was behind me, the future ahead, and I was standing in the middle, in this painful, surreal space. The silence around me was deafening. I thought about the inheritance, the money, the house, the things I had worked so hard for, things I had once imagined would give my daughter a future, but in the end, I had given it away, not because she didn't deserve it, but because she had shown me that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. I had taken control, but in doing so, I had also taken something else, a piece of my heart. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet of the house settle over me. I could still hear her voice in my head. "You meant nothing to me." I had replayed it 1,000 times. Each time it hurt more than the last, but now, I could hear it less. It wasn't as sharp, wasn't as real. It was a moment, a fleeting thing, and I realized I didn't have to carry it anymore. I didn't have to carry any of it. I had done my best. I had given everything I had, and maybe that was enough. Maybe, in some strange way, this was what I had been fighting for all along, to find myself again, to reclaim what I had lost. My phone buzzed in my hand, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Mr. Harris. "I'll take good care of it, and I'll always be here, Mrs. Duncan. Don't forget that." The simple words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in days, I felt a crack in the wall I had built around myself. Not a shattering, not a breaking, but a crack, a small one, but enough to let a sliver of light in. I put my phone down and took a long, steadying breath. The tears came then, but they weren't like before. They were quiet, almost peaceful, not tears of pain but of release, of letting go, of knowing that even though it wasn't the life I had planned, it was still a life, and it was mine. I walked outside, the evening air cool against my skin. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garden. The oak tree loomed in front of me, its branches stretching out into the sky like open arms, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't sure what the future held. I wasn't sure if my daughter and I would ever find our way back to each other, but I knew something now that I hadn't known before. I could survive this. I could survive anything, because I had taken control, and in that moment, it felt like the first time in years I could finally breathe. I couldn't keep living like that. The silence between us, the brokenness in my heart, it was all too much. Each passing day felt like I was suffocating, drowning in a world I no longer recognized, and the anger, it was there, simmering beneath the surface, always present, always waiting for a reason to break free. I thought about what she said every single day. "You mean nothing to me." How could she say that? After everything, after 30 years of love, sacrifice and devotion, I couldn't keep pretending that it didn't matter. I couldn't ignore the hollow feeling inside me anymore. The anger was too overwhelming now, and the more I let it fester, the more I realized something that scared me more than anything. I had to act. I couldn't let this betrayal stand, not when I had given everything and received nothing in return. And then there was Mr. Harris. His quiet presence, his unwavering support, had become a lifeline. I had always seen him as a friend, a neighbor, but now I was starting to see him as something more. He had been there for me, and he had never asked for anything in return. He was the one person who had shown me kindness when I needed it most. He understood. He always understood. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, it hit me. I had been so focused on her, on the daughter who had turned her back on me, that I had completely ignored the one person who had been standing beside me all along. I had the power to make a choice. I didn't have to keep punishing myself by holding on to a love that was unreciprocated. I didn't have to keep pouring my heart into someone who didn't care. I could do something different. I could give it to someone who deserved it, someone who had never once let me down. Mr. Harris. I thought about the inheritance, the house, the savings, the life I had worked so hard to build. All of it was meant for her, but now I realized it wasn't hers to take, not anymore, not after everything she had said. She had already shown me that I meant nothing to her. It was time to show her that I could make my own choices, that I could take control of my life again, that I could take back what was mine. The decision was final. I had made it. I could feel the weight of it as I dialed Mr. Harris's number. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to do this. I needed to take back my power. The phone rang once, twice, and then his voice answered, steady as always. Hello, Mrs. Duncan. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath. I need to talk to you. It's about the inheritance. There was a long pause on the other end. I knew he was probably wondering what had changed, why I was calling him now, why I was bringing this up when I had been silent for so long. I've decided to give it to you, I said, my voice steady but the gravity of the decision making each word feel like a stone sinking into my chest. You want to give it to me? His voice was soft, almost incredulous, but there was no mistaking the sincerity in it. Yes, I said, I want you to have it. I've thought long and hard about this, and I believe you're the one who deserves. You've been there for me when no one else has. You've been a friend, a constant, and for that, for everything you've done, I'm giving you everything. He didn't speak for a long time. The silence stretched between us, but this time, it wasn't suffocating. It was free. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. I never expected this. You don't have to say anything, I replied. Just know that I've made my choice. And with that, I hung up. It was done. I had made the choice. I had taken control. The weight of that realization settled into my bones like a strange, heavy comfort. Like finally finding the door in a maze that seemed to stretch forever. I felt something stir inside me, not relief, not joy, but something else, something quiet. It was power, yes, but it was also a raw kind of grief, a grief I wasn't sure I had permission to feel anymore. I had made the choice, I had decided, and that decision, the one that had been so painfully slow to form, was final. The air in the room felt thicker now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. My heart was pounding against my chest, but strangely, not from fear anymore. No, this wasn't fear, this was something else. It was the feeling of letting go. I could feel the ache of the past years, stretching away from me. Each moment of sacrifice, each tear shed, each sleepless night, each angry word exchanged, all of it felt like a life I was leaving behind. It wasn't the life I wanted, but it was the one I had fought for, the one I had believed in. But now, I was walking away from it. Walking away from the mother I had been. Walking away from the daughter I had tried to save. And somehow, it felt like the only thing I could do to survive. I wasn't sure if I would ever get her back. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to anymore. But I knew this. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her indifference. I couldn't keep giving and giving, only to be thrown away when I was no longer useful to her. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I slowly set the phone down. The conversation with Mr. Harris had been easier than I expected, his acceptance quiet and steady, like a calm river that kept flowing no matter how the storm raged around it. I stood by the window, looking out at the same old view I had seen 1,000 times before, the trees, the garden, the old oak that had watched over our house for decades. It felt like the world had stopped for a moment. Everything had slowed, like a camera focusing in on a single frame. The past was behind me, the future ahead, and I was standing in the middle, in this painful, surreal space. The silence around me was deafening. I thought about the inheritance, the money, the house, the things I had worked so hard for, things I had once imagined would give my daughter a future, but in the end, I had given it away. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because she had shown me that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. I had taken control, but in doing so I had also taken something else, a piece of my heart. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet of the house settle over me. I could still hear her voice in my head. You meant nothing to me. I had replayed it 1,000 times, each time it hurt more than the last. But now, I could hear it less. It wasn't as sharp, wasn't as real. It was a moment, a fleeting thing, and I realized I didn't have to carry it anymore. I didn't have to carry any of it. I had done my best. I had given everything I had, and maybe that was enough. Maybe in some strange way, this was what I had been fighting for all along, to find myself again, to reclaim what I had lost. My phone buzzed in my hand, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Mr. Hare. I'll take good care of it, and I'll always be here, Mrs. Duncan. Don't forget that. The simple words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in days, I felt a crack in the wall I had built around myself. Not a shattering, not a breaking, but a crack, a small one, but enough to let a sliver of light in. I put my phone down, and took a long, steadying breath. The tears came then, but they weren't like before. They were quiet, almost peaceful. Not tears of pain, but of release, of letting go, of knowing that even though it wasn't the life I had planned, it was still a life, and it was mine. I walked outside, the evening air cool against my skin. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garden. The oak tree loomed in front of me, its branches stretching out into the sky like open arms, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I wasn't sure what the future held. I wasn't sure if my daughter and I would ever find our way back to each other, but I knew something now that I hadn't known before. I could survive this. I could survive anything, because I had taken control, and in that moment, it felt like the first time in years I could finally breathe. I thought it would feel like a victory. I thought that once the decision was made, once I had taken back control of my life, I would feel powerful, empowered even. But instead a cold, gnawing emptiness settled in. I hadn't expected this. It was strange, this feeling of something being lost, even though I had gained so much. I had done what I thought was right. I had made my choice. I had given the inheritance to Mr. Harris, and yet there was no sense of closure, no sense of satisfaction, only silence. I waited for her to come home. I waited for the explosion, for the confrontation. I expected her to storm in, to demand answers, to call me every name in the book. She had to know what I had done. She had to know that I had made the decision to walk away from her, to choose someone else. But the house remained still. I waited for the anger. I waited for the tears. I waited for something, anything. But nothing came. The days passed in a haze. I found myself pacing the rooms, checking my phone, hoping for a message, for a call, anything that would give me some sign that she still cared. But there was nothing. No angry words, no phone calls, no texts. It was as if she had already moved on from me. And then the guilt crept in. It wasn't overwhelming at first, just small nagging thoughts that kept whispering to me in the quiet moments. Was I wrong? Had I gone too far? Was this really the answer? Every time I thought about it, I felt the weight of my decision. I had denied her everything, the house, the money, the future I had promised her. And for what? To teach her a lesson, to make her feel the same way I had. Was this truly just, or was it just petty revenge, born from my own broken heart? I tried to shut these thoughts out. I couldn't afford to feel guilty. I couldn't afford to regret what I had done. I had made my choice, and there was no turning back. But when the phone rang one evening, my heart skipped. It was her. I stared at the screen for a long time, my finger hovering over the button. I didn't know if I was ready for this, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I pressed the button. Hello. My voice was steady, though my heart was racing. Mom, she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. I swallowed. What's wrong? I need to talk to you, she said. Can you meet me? There it was, The moment I had been waiting for, the confrontation, the truth coming out. I could feel the air in my lungs getting heavier, as if I couldn't quite catch my breath. "Sure," I said, forcing the words past my dry throat. Where, later that evening, I drove to the coffee shop she had suggested, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind running through every possible scenario. What would she say? What would she think of me now? When I walked in, I saw her sitting at the corner table, her face unreadable. She didn't look angry, she didn't look sad, she just looked tired. I took the seat across from her, the silence stretching out between us. "I don't know what to say," she began, breaking the silence. Her voice was softer than I had expected. I don't understand why you did this, why you chose him, why you gave everything to him." Her words stung, but I couldn't bring myself to interrupt. "I thought I deserved it," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I gave you everything, and you told me I meant nothing to you." "I didn't mean that," she said quickly. "I was just angry. I didn't think." "Then why didn't you think before you said it?" I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Why didn't you think about how much it would hurt me? I've given you everything. I raised you on my own. And this is what I get in return." Her eyes softened, but she didn't speak for a long time. The guilt in my chest was almost unbearable, but I couldn't take it back. I couldn't undo what had already been done. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was angry, but I didn't think about what I was saying. I don't know how to fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in so long, and in that moment, I saw the hurt in her eyes, the same hurt I had felt, the same pain that had been festering for years. I had hurt her too, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if my revenge had been worth it. The thought hit me with a weight I hadn't prepared for, and it took the air from my lungs. I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand. I had called the lawyer. I had made the arrangements. The inheritance was gone, transferred to someone else. It was no longer in my hands, and for a fleeting second, I wondered if I had just severed the last thread between me and her. What if this didn't make her feel the pain I'd intended? What if this didn't force her to see the weight of her work? What if in the end all I had done was alienate myself further from the only person I had ever loved like this? My pulse quickened, and I felt the world closing in again, the silence becoming too much to bear. I'd spent so much of my life believing that love was enough, that the sacrifices I made for her would somehow be repaid in kind, but love hadn't been enough for her. It had never been enough. I closed my eyes and rubbed my temple. The weight of it all was pressing down on me again, the guilt and the anger that had pushed me into this decision now turning on me, sharp and cold. What had I really gained? Had I simply traded one kind of pain for another? Had I made the wrong choice? I sat down at the table, the chair creaking under my weight, the wood cool against my palms. The house felt emptier now, like the space between us had expanded into something unbridgeable, something that would never be healed. Her absence loomed in the corners of every room, a constant reminder of what I had lost. I wanted to believe that I had done the right thing, that this was justice, but there was no satisfaction in the quiet, no relief, only an ache, deep in my chest, that I couldn't name. I picked up the envelope from the table, the one that had held all the documents, the transfer papers, the legal jargon that sealed the fate of everything I had worked for. I turned it over in my hands, the weight of it now a reminder of my decision, my choices. Was it really worth it? Was this the path I had chosen? The thoughts swirled, a fog clouded my mind, the anger, the hurt, the need for retribution. I had buried all of that in this one act, but as I sat there, the silence pressing in around me, I felt it, the hollow feeling of a decision made in pain. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, trying to steady myself. Wasn't this what I wanted? To show her, to make her understand? But the question lingered like a shadow, refusing to leave. Did she even care? I could almost hear her voice again, the coldness in her words. "You meant nothing to me." I felt the sting again, sharper than before, but this time, I didn't fight it. I let the pain wash over me, and I realized something that terrified me more than I had expected. I had been living for her approval, for her love, for her validation. But in the process, I had lost myself. I had let myself be defined by what she thought of me. And now I was standing here, looking at the mess I had created. I had hurt her. I had taken something away from her. But in the process, I had lost myself too. The tears came. But they weren't the same kind of tears that had come before. These weren't angry tears. These were the tears of someone who had finally admitted the truth to themselves. Someone who had stopped lying to themselves about what they were doing. I had wanted to hurt her, but in the end I had hurt myself too. I put the envelope back on the table, and the room felt still again. The weight that had been pressing on me seemed to ease, but only slightly. I wasn't sure if I could forgive myself yet. I wasn't sure if I could find peace in this decision. But I knew one thing. I had taken control. I had made the choice to stop living for someone else. Even if it meant I had to live with the consequences of that choice. I would have to face whatever came next. Whether it was a battle with my daughter or a battle with myself, I wasn't sure. But I knew that I was the one who had to live with this decision. No one else could carry it for me. And as I sat there, in the quiet of the room, I realized that this was the beginning of something new, something that wasn't defined by her rejection, or by my need for her approval. It was just me. We met again 2 days later, but this time, it was different. The air between us was charged, thick with unspoken words and unresolved anger. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, gnawing at me. I knew this meeting would be unlike the others. This was the moment where everything would come to a head. Her eyes met mine as I walked into the room. They were hard, cold. I could see the walls she had built around herself, but I couldn't look away. I needed to know if there was any part of the daughter I once knew still buried beneath all that anger. She didn't greet me, didn't offer any kind of acknowledgement. She simply pointed to the chair across from her. "Sit," she said. Her voice it was like she wasn't even trying anymore. I sat down, the tension between us so thick I could almost taste it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but I could feel my pulse quicken. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment where everything I had bottled up would come spilling out. "I'm not here to fight," she said, breaking the silence. "I just want to understand. I don't get why you did it. Why him? Why Mr. Harris?" I swallowed hard, trying to control the surge of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. I knew she was hurt, but I was hurt too. I had given her everything, and yet, she had dismissed me, thrown me away as if I had meant nothing. I looked at her, my heart heavy, the words bubbling up in my throat. "You told me I meant nothing to you. After everything, after all these years, I wasn't just going to sit back and take that." Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe, or she bit her lip, clearly struggling with her emotions. But she didn't say anything. "I gave you everything I had. I worked so hard for so many years. I stayed up all night, every night, just to make sure you had what you needed. But it was never enough, was it?" I asked, my voice shaking now. "You've always been so distant, so ungrateful. And when you told me I meant nothing to you, I realized something. You don't deserve any of it. You don't deserve the inheritance. You don't deserve the life I built for you. And that's why I gave it to him." She flinched at the mention of Mr. Harris, her eyes narrowing. "So that's it. You just decided I don't deserve anything, because I'm not the daughter you wanted me to be." I flinched at her words. "It's not about what I wanted. It's about what I gave you, what I sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay me." The words burned, each one feeling like a lash to my soul. I couldn't hold back the anger anymore. I had given everything for her, and in return she had dismissed me like I was a nobody. It wasn't just the inheritance, it was everything. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every tear, all of it was meaningless to her. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You know what? Fine. Maybe I don't deserve it. Maybe I don't deserve any of it. But you've made your choice, haven't you? I stood up too, the rage building in me. Yes, I have. And I'm not going to apologize for it. You don't get to treat me like I'm nothing, and then expect me to just give you everything. You don't get to destroy me, and then expect me to pick up the pieces. She looked at me, her face a mixture of confusion and anger. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to hurt you? I think you stopped caring, I shot back, my voice rising now. You stopped caring the moment you said I meant nothing to you, and that was the moment I decided to stop caring too. There was a long pause. She didn't speak. Neither of us did. The silence stretched between us like a chasm we couldn't cross. Finally she spoke. Her voice quieter this time. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't think about what I was saying. I was angry. I didn't know how to deal with everything. But you've made it clear that I'm just not worth your time anymore. I felt a sharp pain in my chest at her words. It was like she was giving up on us, on me. And as much as it hurt, as much as I wanted to take it back, I knew deep down that I couldn't. I couldn't undo what had been done. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of everything wash over me. I don't know if we'll ever get past this. But this is how it has to be. Her face crumpled for a moment, and I saw a flicker of something regret. Maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She turned, heading for the door, and paused just before leaving. I hope one day you realize what you've done, she said quietly before walking out. I stood there, the words ringing in my ears, but I couldn't chase after her. I couldn't fix this. I had made my choice, and maybe, just maybe, she would understand someday. But that day was not today. I had come so close to breaking, so close to calling her, begging her to come back, to just listen to me, to understand why I did what I did. I wanted her to know how much it had hurt, how much it still hurt. I wanted to scream it all out, to shout into the silence that stretched between us. But I couldn't. Something held me back, something inside me. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the tiny shred of dignity I had left, the part of me that knew this wasn't my fault. I had tried, I had given but now, standing here, staring at the empty house, the empty life I had built, I realized something. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about her love or her approval or whether she would ever forgive me. It was about me. I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me. Every room in the house seemed to be echoing with the absence of what had once been. The walls that had witnessed my joy, my pain, the late-night talks with her, the moments of laughter we shared, they now stood as empty witnesses to a life that had slipped away. I walked through the house slowly, my hand trailing along the furniture, the surfaces that had been marked with time. I could hear the soft creaks of the floorboards beneath my feet, like they were remembering the footsteps that had walked these halls. Her footsteps, my footsteps. But now, it was just silence. The weight of it was suffocating, and yet at the same time, there was something oddly freeing about it. I stopped in front of the old oak tree in the yard, the same one I had planted when she was born, and I thought back to those days, when everything seemed so simple, when she was just a child laughing, playing in the yard, asking me to read her stories, asking me about the world. I had poured everything I had into raising her, everything, and yet here I stood, an empty shell of the mother I had once been, the woman who had been her whole world, now nothing more than a distant memory. The anger flared up again, but this time it wasn't as sharp. It was different. It had lost its edge, its ability to burn me. It was a dull ache now, like a scar that had healed over but still throbbed beneath the surface. I leaned against the tree, closing my eyes for a moment, feeling the cool wind on my face. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. The guilt, the regret, The questions. Could I have done something different? Could I have fixed this? The thought lingered in my mind like a shadow creeping into the corners of my consciousness. But then I stopped. I stopped trying to fix it. Because I couldn't. That day wasn't today. Not today. Today, I was still standing here, and today, I had to live with my choices. Today, I had to face what I had done. It wasn't easy. It wasn't comfortable. But it was real. It was my reality. And maybe that's the hardest part of all. Accepting the consequences of your decisions, even when they hurt. Especially when they hurt. I felt the sting of tears again, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. I wasn't ready to break again. I had already broken once, and I knew that this time, I wouldn't let myself fall apart. I couldn't. So I stood there beneath the tree, breathing in the cool air, letting the moment hang there suspended in time, the past, the present, and the future all swirling together in a chaotic mix of emotion. But somehow I felt a shift inside me, a shift I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the first step toward forgiveness. Maybe it was the first step toward healing. Or maybe it was just the first step toward letting go. I didn't know yet. But I did know one thing. The day of reckoning wasn't today. Today, I was still standing. And that in itself felt like a victory. It was 2 days after the confrontation when I received a call that I never expected. The phone rang in the middle of the afternoon, pulling me out of my thoughts. I was still reeling from our argument, still replaying the harsh words. The way she had walked out, her back turned to me. I hadn't heard from her since, and a part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she would come back, apologize, understand. But the longer I waited, the more I realized she was probably gone for good. The distance between us wasn't something I could close with just a few words. But the call changed everything. I glanced at the screen. The name that flashed back at me was unexpected. Attorney James Foster. I felt my stomach drop. My heart began to pound. Why was an attorney calling me? I had no legal issues. Nothing that would warrant such a call. I hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone. Hello, Mrs. Duncan. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. This is Attorney Foster. I'm calling in regard to your daughter, Jennifer Duncan. My heart skipped. What's wrong? Is she all right? My voice was sharp, panicked, despite myself. Mrs. Duncan, I'm afraid I have some difficult news. It concerns the inheritance you recently altered. I blinked, a sharp pain shooting through my chest. What do you mean? I gave the inheritance to Mr. Harris. Yes, I am aware of that. However, he continued, your daughter has left me with legal instructions, that she intends to contest the inheritance. I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Contest it, I repeated, trying to make sense of what was happening. Miss Duncan, I'm afraid your daughter has filed a legal claim. She believes that the inheritance is rightfully hers, and she is seeking to overturn your decision to transfer the assets to Mr. Harris. The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. I couldn't breathe. She was doing what? Contesting it. All those feelings of guilt, of regret that I had been wrestling with for the last few days, suddenly collided with something even more overwhelming. It was as if I had been hit with the full force of the consequences of my actions. But they were far worse than I could have ever imagined. You mean she's suing me? I asked, my voice shaking. Yes, Mrs. Duncan. She has filed a formal petition. I would strongly recommend you prepare yourself for a court hearing. I sat back in my chair, completely stunned. I don't understand, I murmured. She doesn't want me. She told me I meant nothing to her. My words trailed off as the confusion set in. Mrs. Duncan, I understand this is difficult, but you need to be aware that your daughter is entitled to challenge the inheritance. She believes that as your only child she has the legal right to the assets. I could feel my pulse racing in my ears. This was not what I had expected. I thought I had made a final decision. I thought that by cutting her off I was freeing myself from the emotional burden of our relationship. But now, she was taking me to court. I hadn't anticipated this. I hadn't prepared for this. You need to act quickly, the attorney said. If you're going to defend your decision, you'll need to seek legal counsel. I didn't respond at first. The weight of everything was settling on me. My daughter, the one I had raised, the one I had loved with every ounce of my being, was fighting me for what I had worked for, and she was doing it legally. I'll need time, I said finally, my voice small, almost lost. Of course, he replied. Take all the time you need, but understand that this will move quickly. I'll be in touch with more details. The call ended, but the echo of his words lingered in the air. Contest the inheritance. Contest me. It wasn't just the inheritance she was after. No, it was something far worse. It was control. It was the final way for her to say that she owned everything I had given her, even my last act of rebellion, my last decision to take back something for myself, was now being challenged. The realization hit me like a wave. She hadn't just walked away. She hadn't just turned her back on me. No, she was fighting me. She was doing everything she could to take back what I had taken from her. And I had given her the ammunition to do it. I sat there for what felt like hours, but I couldn't seem to move. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, of emotion, anger, confusion, hurt, betrayal, all of it mixing into something I couldn't even begin to untangle. I had made my choice. I had thought that I was taking control, that I was reclaiming my power by giving the inheritance to someone who truly deserved it. But now it was all out of my hands. I thought about calling Mr. Harris, telling him what had happened. But what could I say? I had given him something that wasn't truly mine to give. Now it seemed like everything was falling apart. My daughter, the one I thought I could control, was turning the tables, flipping the script. I didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was for certain. Everything had changed. I was no longer in control of this situation, and I didn't know how to fix it. The realization hit me like a wave, pulling me under with a force I couldn't fight. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I had planned everything. I had carefully crafted every detail of the decision I made, believing that it was the right thing, the only thing left to do. But now I felt like a stranger in my own life. Every decision I had made, every word I had spoken, they were all spiraling out of my grasp, slipping away from me like sand through my fingers. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my palms flat on the cool granite. The room around me was still, the ticking of the clock on the wall the only sound in the silence. I could feel the space closing in around me. The air felt thick, heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. I thought back to the moment I had decided, the moment I had taken that final step, thinking I had control. But now that control was gone, the lawyer's voice still echoed in my mind, the words cutting through the fog in my head. She's contesting it. The inheritance, my decision, the one thing I thought would fix everything, make things right, make her see the pain, make her understand. But instead, it had done the opposite. It had torn everything apart. And now I couldn't fix it. I couldn't undo the damage. The guilt swirled again, heavier than ever. What had I done? What had I truly hoped to achieve with this act of revenge? It had been so clear at the time, so necessary. But now I wasn't sure anymore. I closed my eyes and took a slow, steadying breath. I needed to think. I needed to figure out what to do next. But how could I even begin to fix something so broken? The air in the room felt colder now. I could hear the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the corner. But it was like everything else had fallen silent. I stood there, motionless, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands clenched at my sides. I was trapped in this whirlwind of choices, of actions that had led me here. And now, I couldn't see a way out. I glanced toward the window, the sunlight filtering through the blinds. The world outside seemed so normal, so untouched by the storm I was standing in the middle of. The leaves of the tree outside swayed gently in the breeze, and I could almost feel the warmth of the sun against my skin, but inside I was frozen. I thought of her, my daughter, the girl I had raised, the girl who had once been everything to me, and now I didn't even know who she was. Was this my fault? Had I pushed her away too far? Was this the consequence of everything I had sacrificed? Everything I had done for her? Was this how it was always meant to end? I didn't know. I didn't have the answers. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. But I didn't reach for it. I couldn't. The last thing I needed was more decisions. More things out of my control. But still, the vibration continued. Relentless. I glanced at it finally, seeing the name flashing across the screen. Mr. Harris. For a moment, I almost didn't pick it up. I wasn't sure I could handle another conversation. Not now, not with everything that was unraveling. But then, I did. I pressed the phone to my ear, hearing his familiar voice on the other end. Mrs. Duncan? He said softly. I know you've been through a lot. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. His voice, calm and steady, felt like a lifeline. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let his words wash over me. Mr. Harris, I started, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to do. I thought I could control this, but now, it's all falling apart. And I don't know how to fix it. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could almost hear him sigh, as if he had been waiting for me to say those words. You don't have to fix it, Mrs. Duncan, he said gently. Sometimes, things are beyond our control, and when that happens, we just have to let go. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, like something inside of me loosened, just slightly. Let go. Maybe that was what I needed to hear. Maybe the reason everything was spiraling was because I was still holding on to the past, to the pain, to the hope that things would be different if I just kept fighting. But maybe it wasn't about fighting anymore. Maybe it was about surrender. The thought was terrifying. How could I surrender after everything? After all the years of sacrifice, of giving, of loving, and then being rejected? How could I just let go? But I knew, deep down, that holding on was the thing that was truly breaking me. I took another deep breath. The air felt lighter now, almost as if the weight that had been on my shoulders for so long was beginning to lift. I don't know how to let go, I said, my voice trembling, but I think I need to try. There was a quiet pause, and then Miss Harris spoke again, his voice full of understanding. You don't have to do it alone, Mrs. Duncan. You never have to do it alone. And in that moment, something inside me cracked open, not in a way that hurt, but in a way that allowed me to breathe again, to realize that I didn't have to carry this burden alone. I didn't have to keep fighting. Not anymore. Maybe, just maybe, the peace I was searching for wasn't something I could control. It wasn't something I could force. It was something I had to let in. It's strange, isn't it, how life can break you, and then over time, rebuild you into something else, something stronger, something you never imagined you could be. I spent so many years giving everything I had to someone who never asked for it, never even seemed to notice. I poured myself into my daughter, into our life, into the hopes I had for the future. I believed that if I gave her enough, she would come to appreciate it, to see the sacrifices, to understand how much I had loved her. But I was wrong. And maybe that was the hardest part, realizing that the love I thought was enough, wasn't, that I couldn't force someone to care, no matter how hard I tried. But through it all, I had forgotten one simple truth. I was enough. I had always been enough. The moments of peace I had felt lately, the relief from the anger, the release from the guilt, they had taught me something. They had shown me that I was worthy of love, worthy of happiness, worthy of a life that didn't revolve around constantly proving myself to others. The inheritance, the fight with my daughter, the pain, it all seemed like a distant memory now, and though it still stung in places, I knew I had made the right choice. I had chosen to take control of my life, to stop letting the expectations of others dictate who I was. It wasn't easy, it still isn't. There are days when the weight of everything feels like too much to carry. Days when I wish things could be different, when I wish I could go back and fix the things I broke. But I know now that I can't. I can only move forward. I walked outside this morning, the sun warm on my skin. The air was fresh, the kind of air that makes you feel like you can breathe again. The house felt different now. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was peaceful. I walked to the garden, the same garden where I had once planted flowers with my daughter, the same garden that had been a symbol of the life we had shared. The flowers had grown wild now, untended, but beautiful in their own way. I ran my fingers over the petals, feeling their softness, and for the first time in so long, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Maybe it wasn't too late for us. Maybe in time, we could find a way back to each other. But even if we didn't, I had learned something powerful, that I didn't need her approval to be whole, that I didn't need anyone's approval to be enough. The road ahead was still uncertain. The legal battle with my daughter was far from over, but I knew now that I had the strength to face anything. The house, the inheritance, they no longer defined me. I had defined myself, and that, I realized, was the true gift I had given myself. It was strange, almost surreal, how much lighter I felt, like a weight had been lifted, one I didn't even realize I had been carrying for so long. I stood in the quiet of the room, my hands trembling slightly, but this time it wasn't from fear or anger. No, it was from something different, something softer, relief. For the first time, I allowed myself to sit with it, to not run from the emptiness, the loneliness, the pain, but to just breathe it in. And in that moment, I realized that this space, this quiet, wasn't empty. It was mine. It wasn't about the inheritance anymore. It wasn't about the choices I had made or the hurt I had caused. It wasn't about whether she would forgive me or if we would ever speak again. No, this was about me, about finally accepting who I was, who I had become, and realizing that, despite everything, I was still worthy of peace, worthy of love, worthy of my own forgiveness. I closed my eyes and took a slow, steady breath, letting the calmness wash over me. The anger was gone, the guilt was fading. What remained was clarity. I hadn't known how much I needed this, how much I needed to stop living for others, to stop giving pieces of myself to people who would never truly understand. I had spent so many years holding on to a life I thought I had to live, a life I thought I had to sacrifice everything for. But in the quiet of this moment, I realized that I didn't have to keep sacrificing, not anymore. I walked over to the window, pulling the curtain aside, and for the first time, the world outside didn't feel so overwhelming. The streets were quiet, the sky painted in hues of pink and purple as the sun began to set. It felt like the world was holding its breath with me, and maybe that was the point. I had been holding my breath for so long, waiting for someone to make me whole again, but the truth was, I had to do that for myself. I had to give myself permission to heal, to stop waiting for the world to change, to stop waiting for apologies, for understanding. I had to change. The tears that had been welling up in my eyes finally spilled over, but these weren't the angry tears from before. These were the tears of release, of letting go of a life I didn't need to hold on to anymore, of forgiving myself for the things I had done, and the things I hadn't. I wasn't perfect, I never had been, but I had done the best I could, and that was enough. I looked out at the horizon, the fading light casting a soft glow over the world. It was beautiful, it was peaceful, it was mine. The phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. For a moment, I hesitated, wondering who it was, what it was, if I was ready for it. But when I saw the name on the screen, I took a deep breath. It was her. I didn't pick up immediately. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I could feel a shift inside me, a softness, a quiet strength, and so I answered. Hello. My voice was steady, but there was a calmness I hadn't felt in so long. Mom, her voice was tentative, unsure, but there was something else in it now, something that hadn't been there before. I felt a pang in my chest, a mix of hope and fear, but I let the silence stretch between us, letting it speak louder than any words could. I'm here, I said softly. I'm here, and for the first time, it felt like I didn't need to say anything else, because the truth was, I had finally learned to live for myself. I had finally learned that I was enough, and no matter what happened next, no matter where this journey led me, I knew now that I would be okay. I thought revenge would heal the wound, but all it did was deepen the scar. In the end, it wasn't about what I took, it was about what I gave away in the process. I walked away, but not without paying a price. Here at RL's Circle, your story matters too. We all face moments where we question our worth, our choices, and whether holding on or letting go will truly set us free. So what would you choose? To keep fighting for what you've lost, or to let go and find peace? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.